arc? What's a story arc? All I know is nonsense. Yeah, we're not getting another story arc for a while. Here we go. Start the nonsense. Season 24, Episode 1, Suspended Rights. School time again! Jake somehow nets himself in school suspension for some reason, so he ends up having to work in the cafeteria for the next 2 weeks. On one particular day, though, he finds the goo monster in the stew. Goopy attacks everyone, and Reeth ends up revealing his weird ears and tail to everyone in the process of saving the day. Wonderful. Yes. Great episode. One of the greatest. Episode 2, Dance Drama. We can't go 2 feet without another freaking school dance. I'm going to lose it. So yet another school dance is coming up, and surprise, surprise, it's another stupid Sadie Hawkins dance, because why? So Sadie Hawkins dance time again, I guess. Jake gets asked by a cheerleader named Liu, and Rose gets super jealous, so she forces Reeth to go to the dance with her to try to make Jake jealous, and Reeth is super flustered the whole time because he doesn't realize that going to a dance with someone does not mean you actually have romantic feelings for them, just as Rose apparently does not, considering this premise. So they all go to the dance. Then the FBI shows up. I cannot freaking. So shenanigans occur, Jake stops the FBI, and wow, everyone lives happily ever after. I don't remember how this episode actually ends, but it's something like that, I'm sure. Oh yeah, also Liu, that girl that doesn't really matter except for one more time, finds out Jake has superpowers, and Jake is like, welp, oops, nothing really comes out of this. Yippee! Episode 3, Back to Palentia. Jake gets confronted by some royal guards and whisked back to Palentia. Once there, he meets up with Jade and learns the terrible news that their alien mother has gone missing. Now Jake and Jade's grandmother has temporarily taken over the throne to try to get Jake and Jade ready to take over rulership of the planet. Neither Jake nor Jade wants this to happen, so they decide to work together to rebel against their grandmother and leave Palentia because, as much as Jake doesn't want Palentia to fall apart, he has to get back to his team and the world will probably fall apart or something, and working with Jade may or may not have been the only way to accomplish that. Then, while they're at a banquet, Morris attacks and kills their grandmother. Oops! So Jake and Jade beat Morris and get him to release their alien mother before they go home. Hooray! Episode 4. The other episode I'm not talking about. I told you there were 2. This is the other one. You don't get to know why. Next episode. Episode 5, Team Deathmatch. So this episode was conceived in 2013. You know what else was popular in 13? The Hunger Games. Jake, Rose, Mandy, and Reeth are roped into an interdimensional killing game they can't escape from. The rules are simple. There are 24 competitors, but 5 of them are spies. Each spy must kill one person and make it 3 days without being caught. If they manage to make it without being caught, they live, but if they're discovered as the killer, they die. This is super convoluted and stupid. On the first day of the tournament, Reeth finds out some old acquaintances of his from his home dimension are involved in the game as well. Spot, Beth, and Reba. Spot is a nosy know-it-all. Beth used to bully Reeth when they were kids, and yes, Beth is a dude because I thought myself so clever, and Reba is Reeth's childhood crush. That's about all these characters are. I hope you enjoy them. The first few days of the game get underway, and the first killer works quickly, having made the first kill within an hour of the game starting. The killer is unable to be found. Upon the next kill, though, the lightning speed team are determined to find out who done it. After a thorough investigation, they pin down a suspect who resists and tries to kill them, but he falls dead in front of them because some device on his person just kills him automatically. This is so stupidly edgy, it hurts. The game continues with 2 more killers making their move and being caught and executed. After a few days, though, the 5th spy is yet to show themselves and everyone's getting worried and suspicious. Ooh. Finally, after a week, the killer strikes, but it's Reba that gets the axe. Reeth is furious and he immediately goes Ace Attorney mode trying to figure out who killed his waifu, but nothing turns up. Except when he looks over Reba's body one more time and finds an incriminating piece of evidence that pins the murder to, of all people, Jake. Super gasp! Oh my gosh, wow, what a twist! So Reeth hunts Jake down, tackles Jake to the ground, and uses a kitchen knife to stab him 27 times in the chest through a metal chest plate because edginess. My good gracious, this is way too edgy. I feel like the story just cut me, my gosh. So Jake is dead now, the game is over, and everyone goes home, and Reeth is like, wait a minute, what the frick did I just do? End of episode. It's a 2-parter. Whee! Episode 6, Somewhere Along in the Bitter Descent. Reeth is upset, Rose and Mandy won't forgive him for murdering Jake, and everything's awful, so Reeth goes back to his home dimension and runs into Beth. The two actually end up having a surprisingly civil talk about Reba, and Reeth pretty much spills all his anxieties. That's when Reith realizes the true answer to fix everything. Everything is always fixed by time travel. So Reith time travels, saves Jake's life, gets himself, Rose, and Mandy out of the death game, and everything is cool again. Time travel once again fixes everything. Good night. Season 25, Episode 1. Jakenstein sees her. You are not prepared for this episode. You are extremely unprepared for this episode. Lord Grievel the Great is back, and this time he's got a scheme so diabolically convoluted that it has to succeed. He uses his magic whatever the plot requires powers to send Jake into an alternate reality where he gets shoved off the roof at Dubose High, because we're back at Dubose High again, I guess, and it kills him. He's then resurrected a la Frankenstein. After that, Grievel mind controls him into killing the principal, because this school can't keep a principal alive for crap. Then we're somehow thrown into the second act of Julius Caesar, where Rose commits suicide because Portia and Jake, Antius, and Nias do a thing. I don't know. I don't remember that much about Julius Caesar. And then Jake walks off into the sunset in Antarctica because Frankenstein, I guess. I don't remember. I think I was drunk when I wrote this or something. Frick, wait, where's the resolution? Episode 2, The Butterfly Effect. Okay, hold a hiccup. There's a great big missing episode here. I suppose there was one particular episode that somehow got left out of my episode document, even though it's a hugely important episode. We need to go over it right fast before we get into episode 2, and you will see why when we reach the end. Episode something. They can't stop all of us. Jake gets kidnapped by the FBI and taken to Area 51 because he's an alien. They then proceed to make clones of him for no reason, but the clones are unstable and they start falling apart. It's a complete horror show. Eventually Jake breaks free and fights his way through the zombie clones to make it out of Area 51. Here's the important part. One of these clones actually managed to transport itself to Ilia and is possessed by Nightmare's ghost, because as elaborated on in the Nightmare story, Nightmare did indeed become a ghost. The clone's body then becomes Nightmare's new permanent body, and his arms are completely made of bone now because of the messed up state of the clone. Also in the Nightmare story, Nightmare meets Red directly after this and invites Red to live at his place, and Red agrees. Amazing. Awesome. Cool. Alright, that's out of the way. Let's finally get into Episode 2. Episode 2, The Butterfly Effect. Jake, Antius, Nias, Parellus, Nightmare, and Red are all captured by an insane girl with butterfly wings from another dimension and held hostage. Together, the 6 of them have to find a way out. There's a lot of arguing between them, including confusion as to how Nightmare and Red are even alive, before they finally enact a plan. Too bad Parellus has already been taken away by the butterfly girl to have his bodily fluid sucked out, because that's what evil butterflies do, I guess? Their plan is to have Parellus do the thingy that Nias did in Season 19 to get Antius into his body and get a power boost. Parellus does this before the butterfly girl can kill him, then combined, they defeat the butterfly girl and free everyone else, and they go home. The end. I assure you this would not have made sense if Nightmare was still dead. Episode 3, Fire and Brimstone. Jake and Rose somehow get transported to another dimension. The episode is really about Rose, though, because she wakes up to find Jake missing. When she finally finds him, he's drugged up to the point of being nearly unconscious and positioned precariously above a pit of fire so that he can be some kind of sacrifice for a group of weird savages or something like that. That said, Rose has to save Jake before he dies. I forget exactly how she does this, but she does. Episode over. What? I can't remember every plot resolution. Give me a break. Episode 4, House of the Dead. At the same time as the previous episode, Reith and Mandy get transported into a haunted house where Mandy is kidnapped by a ghost and Reith has to save her despite being deathly afraid of ghosts and haunted houses because of some traumatic event in his past or something. Reith has to encounter a bunch of really scary things in the haunted house, and a ghost makes him feel really bad about himself, and somewhere along the line he's given a rose that represents his life force that's totally not ripped off from Eve. What are you talking about? When he finally finds Mandy, though, she's a living skeleton, brainwashed into attacking Reith. For some reason, he figures that the only way to save Mandy and stop the power of the haunted house is to tear the petals off the rose in an act of self-sacrifice that was also totally not ripped off from Eve. I don't even know! I never played Eve! A friend told me about some of the stuff from it years ago, and I barely remembered it going into conceiving this episode, but I guess I remember just enough, apparently. Finally, both Reith and Mandy wake up in the middle of a clearing in a completely different place, where Rose just happens to appear with Jake in her arms a second later. It turns out Reith's whole adventure was a dream. Maybe. Dun dun dun! Episode 5, Uhulu Redo. Jake goes back to Uhulu, aka the island that thinks Jake is a god, and everyone's angry at him because they found out he's just an ordinary boy that just so happens to have superpowers, so they try to kill him. I'd tell you more, but that's all I remember, so... Episode 6, Jake and the Lovely Group of Weirdos. Jake's school deems him absolutely crazy, so he's sent to a therapy group to try to mitigate the crazy. While there, though, he meets a group of others his age who are all clearly crazier than him. There's Annalise, a frantic germaphobe of the highest degree, Kurt, a boy that actually believes he's possessed by a demon that wears sunglasses all the time to keep everyone else from getting cursed, Della, who still genuinely believes that her imaginary friend is real, and Fink, who doesn't talk at all, whatsoever. Somewhere along the line, they all get assaulted by the dumb gang because I don't hecking know. Jake fights them off, having to reveal his superpowers to his therapy group in the process. They then accept him for who he is, and the episode ends with none of this ever being mentioned again for probably very good reasons, aka because it was stupid. Episode 7! Wow, we're on a roll with the 7-episode seasons this time around, aren't we? Dimensional Wrens. Dimensional Wrens. Dimensional Wrens is literally all my notes will tell me. I thought I had an idea about what it was, but I found out what I was actually thinking of actually occurs in like season 40 or something, so I really don't know. Something inconsequential happens at the end next season. I'm horrible. So we're about to dive headfirst into season 26, where we begin our next story arc, but we've hit a great big hecking wrench in the works. For seasons 1 through 19, I've had real episode summaries and even some full episodes to work off of. For seasons 20 through 25, I had the sarcastic episode summaries I wrote in 2016 to guide me along. Now, all that is gone, and all I have to work off of is my episode list document where my only information listed is vague 1 to 2 word descriptions of each episode. This is where the game goes from easy baby mode to Dark Souls. I'm going to try my hardest to remember what happens in each episode, but my memory is bound to have gaps because all this was conceived in like 2013, 2014, 2015, and in case you haven't noticed, we are now in 2020. So yeah, warning, things get really shaky from here, and I've decided that all of the episode titles you're going to see going forward are going to be the brief, vague descriptors themselves, so you can get a picture of what I'm working off of. And it all begins with Season 26. Season 26, Episode 1, Wonder Girl X. Jake finds an abandoned laboratory once owned by the Wonder Girls, and inside he finds a robot labeled Wonder Girl X. He takes it back to Trey, and Trey manages to get it activated, but it immediately flips out and rockets off to the Wonder Girl headquarters. Confused, Jake follows it before it gets into the headquarters, and Jake witnesses it murder like 5 Wonder Girls. Wow, great robot! The Wonder Girl leader, angry at Jake, explains that the robot was a failed experiment by the Wonder Girls that, while meant to fight crime, went haywire and tried to kill the Wonder Girls, so instead it was deactivated. Yes, this is also a remnant of the Wonder Girl series. So Jake is blamed for reactivating the robot, and the Wonder Girls want to arrest him, so Jake has to get out of Dodge. What's more, his team is against him now as well, because I don't hecking know, so Jake has to break into Trey's lab and steal a spaceship so he can escape to space. Episode 2, Jade. After Jake escapes into space, he decides that he can't go to Palentia because it would be too easy to find him there, so he decides to try to enlist Jade's help because I really don't know. With that, Jake goes to Jade's planet, Aurelia, and tracks her down. Considering she's a space assassin, Jake just needs to find her office and he's set. He finds her and tries to get her help, but she refuses to help him. As Jake leaves, he bumps into one of Jade's frequent clients, Crazy Louie, and he goes ballistic and tries to kill Jake. Then something Jade has mercy on Jake and agrees to help him. I really don't remember how this happens. There was probably no logic to it anyway. So many parts of this arc are really, really fuzzy in my mind, but I remember the key points, so bear with me here. So Jake and Jade go to space together with some of Jade's space assassin friends. No, I don't remember who they are, and that's the end of this one. Episode 3, Fugitive Jake. For the life of me, I cannot remember what this episode is. I really can't. I'm so sorry. It probably wasn't even important anyway. Episode 4, WG Side. This episode revolves around the rest of the team in the Wonder Girl spaceship after they went to space to find Jake. It's mostly a lot of talking about Jake, with Rose, Wraith, and Mandy not really believing that Jake could be a criminal. They then find Jake and Jade's spaceship and infiltrate it, but Jake and Jade beat them back and escape. Then the rest of the team is like, oh wow, he's working with Jade. Yeah, he must really be a criminal then. Yep. Episode 5, Time Machine. Hey, guess what fixes everything again? So Jake and Jade go back to Ilya because Jake thinks that getting the time machine will help him because time travel fixes everything. So the entire episode is about him, Jade, and Jade's friends getting to the time machine. I don't remember where exactly it is, probably still in the Justice Team headquarters like it always is. All I know is that they get it. Episode 6, Alternate Timeline. So Jake uses the time machine and uses it to attempt to fix everything. But something goes wrong and he ends up in an alternate timeline where everything's wrong. I don't remember how everything's wrong, it just is. Then Jake's like, why did everything go wrong? Before he gets dragged into the void and confronted by another new character, which we meet in the next episode because cliffhanger. Episode 7, Void Test. Wow, it's another episode 7! Hey look! It's Flick! Yeah, that Flick. The one that will go on to later become a major character in the Cannon Fire series. This was his debut. Flick is a time agent, and he's here to give Jake a stern talking to for messing up the time stream with all his time traveling because, believe it or not, time travel shouldn't fix everything. I can't believe this actually got addressed. So Flick tells Jake off and gives Jake a test. If he passes, Flick will return Jake to his own timeline. If he fails, Jake will be erased from the time stream forever. Jake accepts and begins the test. Frick, I don't remember what the test was. It was absolutely definitely something about gathering his friends in the alternate timeline for something, but I don't remember what for or what any of it entailed. Anyway, Jake does it, but before Flick sends him back, Jake is like, what the frick do I do about the whole being wanted for causing the murder of all those Wonder Girls thing? And Flick has a talk with him about how time travel shouldn't be the answer to every problem and how he needs to accept the consequences of his actions. And Jake formulates a plan while Flick is talking, and he thanks Flick for his help and lets Flick send him home. When he gets back, he tells the Wonder Girls that he's very sorry for the murder robot and that he didn't know it was a murder robot and that they definitely shouldn't arrest him because he didn't know it was a murder robot. This works. Also, Jade joins the Wonder Girls because I don't hecking know. She's with them now. She's not a Wonder Girl, but she's working with them. It's dumb, but that's what it is. Freaking stupid. Season 27, Episode 1, Return to Gwyleth. There's a motto I have when it comes to Lightning Speed 1. Nothing is ever truly dead, except Emilio. This episode lives by that motto. So Trey has found a way for Jake to get back into Gwyleth, and Jake takes Reeth with him, excited to show Reeth Gwyleth, I guess? Last I remember, Gwyleth was ruled by a government that hated Jake, but details. So Jake and Reeth get to Gwyleth, but everyone there is frozen in time because time isn't moving, because Gwyleth is still technically dead. There's a radius surrounding Jake and Reeth, though, where time starts up again because something like Jake and Reeth are from a not-dead dimension, so time is able to exist around them or something dumb like that. Eventually, they find Brittany. Is that her name? I don't actually remember, and I don't feel like scrolling back up through my scripts to confirm it. Whatever, that's her name now. And she comes back to life when she gets in the time radius and starts talking to them, and she and Jake tell Reeth how Gwyleth died and they could only save 10 people and all that. Well, something about that seriously triggers Reeth for whatever reason, because he and Jake start arguing, and it ends with them fighting, and both their feelings are hurt really bad, and Reeth slams Jake on the ground and leaves. He just goes home and leaves Jake there on the ground. So Reeth gets home and cries in his room or something. Later, he wants to apologize to Jake, but Jake never actually came home. Even the next morning, Jake still doesn't come home. Jake is gone. So Reeth freaks out, no one knows where Jake is, and Reeth has to lead the Lightning Speed team now while they try to find Jake. Yes, this is a story arc. Wow! Episode 2, Reeth Test. Trey calls Reeth to his lab to test a new virtual reality device or something, and the virtual reality device turns Reeth into Jake during the events of some past episode, I don't remember which one. So Reeth has to do the Jake things, and in the end, Trey reveals that he used this to test Reeth to see if he was capable of leading the Lightning Speed team. Great. Episode 3, Reeth vs. Arrow and Gang. The dumb gang has found their way to Ilya somehow and demands to fight Jake because they find out that Icebolt is dead. With Jake missing in action, though, Reeth has to fight them instead. He fights them and wins and sends them back to the real world. That's pretty much it. Episode 4, Reeth and Winona. I want to say that this episode has a part where Reeth vents to Winona about Jake's disappearance and his feelings about Jake, but I'm not even totally sure, and I can't even tell you what surrounds it or why he's talking to Winona of all people. So I'll just leave it at that and move on. Episode 5, Captured by Aliens. Well, that descriptor is something and a half. I really wish I remembered what this episode actually was, because what the actual frick is this? Part of me really wants to say that this is referring to the aliens that Auntie, Scoopy, and Grable had to fight way back in Season 13, and that Reeth gets captured by them and has to escape. But that's just a wild guess on my part, and it might not even be a real thing. I have to trust that my brain knows what it's talking about, though, because it's an entirely more likely guess that it has to do with Palentian shenanigans, and it's weird that my brain went to the random Season 13 aliens first, so there has to be some credence to it somewhere, so we'll just go with it. Episode 6, Reeth Blacklisted. I absolutely hate that there are so many episodes in a row that I don't remember the premises of, especially since I know for a fact that this one's important because this is the end of the Jake is gone so Reith leads the team arc. The basics of this one is that something bad happens, probably something like the others finding out that Reith is the reason Jake is gone. Reith gets kicked out of the team, then Jake comes back and is like, you can't kick Reith out, I'm the leader, and he lets Reith back into the team. Yeah, Jake just kind of shows back up, I know that much. And that's the end of the Jake goes missing so Reith leads the team arc. Now we get to the next arc, and boy oh boy is this one something. Season 28, Episode 1, Jake's story begins. So the big question on everyone's minds after the events of Season 27 is where the heck was Jake this entire time? Thankfully, Jake is fully ready to tell the story, and boy is it a heck of a story. So during Jake and Reith's argument in Gwilith, Reith happened to say something like, you're not a real hero letting all these people die like that. And Jake took it way harder than he should have, considering, he had literally no say in the matter. So he decided to frick off on a journey of self-discovery for a while, and that's what this entire season is here to detail. So Jake fricks off to another dimension and ends up meeting these other superheroes that I absolutely do not remember because they are absolutely not important in the slightest whatsoever, and they have no personalities. Jake ends up joining with them after some incident I can't remember and is now at the bottom of the superhero ladder. In theory, this is not a bad idea. In practice, though, this gets really messy really fast because every episode that follows this barely ever touches on Jake's inner psyche after this demotion. Instead, it's all stupid shenanigans all the time. Ready for shenanigan number 1? Episode 2, Pencil. This episode is Doodle Bob. No, I'm serious. Jake finds this pencil that can draw things that come to life and Doodle Bob shenanigans ensue. I'm not even making this up. End me. Episode 3, Precarious. Jake and the rest of the League of Superheroes, which is what I'm calling them because I don't actually remember who they are, fight one of the League of Superheroes' arch-rivals, Professor Precarious, who's a recycled leftover from an ancient series of mine that never saw the light of day and isn't relevant to anything, and he's a blatant rip-off of Professor Calamitous from Jimmy Neutron. They defeat him and the day is saved. That's it. Episode 4, Meow. Kill me. Jake is kidnapped by an anime catgirl supervillain named Meow and has to bide his time as a hostage while he waits for the other superheroes to come and save him. This is one of the best of the season 28 episodes in theory because it puts Jake in a helpless situation where he has to wait for someone else to come and save him, and I believe he also talks a whole heck of a lot with the supervillain of this episode about what he's feeling, even though the villain couldn't care less and just wants to banter with him. With some love, this could have been a fun one. Episode 5, Team Up. Yeah, this one completely eludes me. I can't even come up with a hypothetical for what this one could have possibly been. Sorry about that. Episode 6, Attack in Ilia. So this is the point where Jake finishes up telling his story to the others, and we jump back to the present. Suddenly, though, the team figures out that Professor Precarious has followed Jake to Ilia and is wreaking havoc, and the other superheroes are also here, and Jake reveals to the other superheroes that he is his own superhero team, and they all fight together to beat Professor Precarious and send him back with the other superheroes to their own dimension. There we go, another arc down. Next time, it's on to Season 29, because another arc awaits us there. See ya then!